There are just 20 days left to go until the 2024 presidential election, and today I'll be updating my electoral map prediction between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. If you ask members of both parties how they're feeling about this election, Democrats are scared while Republicans are feeling quite bullish about Trump's chances, and it's not hard to see why. Just look at the battleground polling. Trump leads in every single swing state except for one, and that of course being Wisconsin, where Harris is probably going to lose her lead in the next few days anyway. Today, I have to tell you that this election really is very different. Trump is in a much better position than he was 4 years ago, and even much better than he was in 2016 when he defeated Hillary Clinton. So, to start filling in the map, we're going to begin with the solid states for both candidates. These are races that Harris and Trump are going to win by 15 percentage points or more. These are going to be easy victories for either candidate. So, beginning with the solid blue states, we have Washington, California, Hawaii, as well as the 1st District of Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, and the District of Columbia. This gives the vice president 109 electoral votes. While Donald Trump is the clear favorite in Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except its 2nd District, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, Alaska, and the 2nd District of Maine. This puts Trump in the lead with 126 electoral votes. Next up, we're going to fill in the likely states, which will be decided by 7 to 15-point margins. These races are going to be slightly more competitive, but one candidate will still maintain a clear edge. We're going to begin with the likely states for Kamala Harris, starting out west in Oregon. It simply isn't as liberal as Washington and California. In fact, the governor's race in Oregon in 2022 went down to a single-digit margin. Then, in Colorado, Kamala Harris is not going to perform better than Joe Biden in literally any state, and Colorado is not going to be the one where she makes an exception. Biden won the state by 14 points, and he wasn't even able to win it by a solid margin. There's no way Harris is going to be able to do that. She's probably going to win it by around 10 points at most. And then in Illinois, this is Barack Obama's home state. Harris is going to win it by just under 15. It's gone to the last 3 Democratic nominees, Obama, Clinton, and Biden, by around 17 points each, but Harris simply isn't performing as well as the last 3 nominees. She's probably going to be the worst performing Democrat in any election since 1988. Moving up to the Northeast, this is really where Harris's performance has been pathetic, especially in New York. Every Democrat has won New York by a solid margin going back over 30 years. Joe Biden won it by 23 points 4 years ago. But today, Harris leads in the Empire State by just 13.5 percentage points in the polling, and this is not a fluke. It's not just 1 or 2 polls showing her up by such an abysmal margin. When Joe Biden was in the race, he led by 8 to 10. Harris is performing better, but she hasn't been able to crack 15, and so New York is going to be likely blue on the map for the first time since 1988. Then, we also have New Jersey and Delaware, which are going to be likely blue along with it. So, with both the solid and likely states now filled in for the vice president, Kamala Harris is at 191 electoral votes. Now we're going to move on to the likely states for Trump, states he's going to win by 7 to 15 points. We're going to begin up in the Midwest with Iowa and Ohio, 2 states that are obviously going to vote for the former president for a 3rd time. He won both of them by 8 to 10 points in both 2016 and 2020. People thought Joe Biden was going to be competitive in these states once again, but he lost them by virtually the same margin that Clinton lost them by 4 years prior. In 2024, Kamala Harris isn't even going to get close. Iowa and Ohio are no longer competitive. Trump is probably going to be able to win both of these states by 10 percentage points or more. Then down south, we have 2 more likely red states, beginning with Texas, 40 electoral votes, a big prize for the former president. But Trump is going to win Texas for a 3rd time in a row. Mitt Romney was the last Republican to win the state by a solid margin when he defeated Obama here in 2012. But in 2016 and 2020, Trump hasn't been able to perform as well. Texas generally is shifting to the left. It hasn't been Trump's strongest state over the last 8 years. However, there's no doubt he is going to win it. He's probably going to be able to win it by his largest margin yet. Texas will probably go to Trump by a 10-point margin, just like Iowa and Ohio. Then we have Florida. This used to be one of the most competitive states in the country. It was always talked about as being a must-win for both candidates because of how many electoral votes it wielded. It always flipped back and forth between red and blue, but that is no longer the case. Joe Biden was expected to win Florida, but in fact, he performed worse than Clinton did when she lost the state back in 2016. Today, Trump is going to win Florida by just over 7 points. It's going to be the final likely state on this map. With both these solid and likely states filled in, Trump maintains his lead. He is now at 219 electoral votes. Coming back to the map, we're now going to fill in the lean states for both candidates. These races will be decided by 2 to 7 points. They could potentially vote either way, but one candidate still maintains a slight edge. We're going to start off with the lean blue states. Beginning in New Mexico, Kamala Harris is probably going to win the state by just under 7 points. Joe Biden won it by 11 in the last election. So still a big drop-off, but the vice president remains the favorite in the state, a state no Republican has won since 2004. Moving up to Minnesota, this is another state where Kamala Harris is favored, mainly because she chose Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. Without him, Minnesota would probably be a tilt state in favor of either Harris or even Trump. Looking at the polling in the state, Harris leads by just 4.7%, despite running with the state's literal governor. When Joe Biden ran in 2020 with Kamala Harris as his vice president, who isn't from anywhere near Minnesota, he was able to win the state by a likely 7-point margin. This is yet another sign of Harris underperforming compared to Biden from 4 years ago. Minnesota is also going to be lean in favor of the Democrats. Meanwhile, in the Northeast, we have 2 likely states from 2020 that are now going to be lean. Both New Hampshire and Maine are likely to vote for the vice president, just not by as large of margins as they voted for Democrats in the last election. Finally, we have the Commonwealth of Virginia. This race can definitely get competitive, and it's one to watch closely over the next 3 weeks. There's definitely a non-zero chance that Trump can win here. In fact, I would say his odds sit around 20%. Donald Trump can flip Virginia, a state where Republicans secured the governorship back in 2021. Virginia generally has been shifting back to the right, despite no Republican having won the state since 2004. But today, Harris leads by just 6 points. Joe Biden won the state by a double-digit margin in the last election. Looking at the polling here, the only reason she's ahead by such a large margin is because of 2 recent left-leaning polls that have been released. I expect Virginia to go to Harris by around 2 to 5 points. It could potentially be less, but I'll keep you updated on the race in the state. For now, it's going to be lean Democratic on the map. We also have the 2nd District of Nebraska, where Harris is a very slight favorite. Once we get that out of the way, we are left with a very familiar map, just the final 7 swing states. These states are reportedly the most competitive on the map, although Harris's performance has been so poor that many of these states are just as competitive as states like Minnesota and Virginia that Biden won easily in the last election. Now, diving deep into these final 7 states, we're going to start in Arizona, a state that Trump lost in the last election. In fact, Biden won it by 0.3%. This was the first time Republicans lost Arizona going all the way back to 1996. Just using common sense, can Kamala Harris really win a state that Biden won by such a small margin? Biden's performance in 2020 was quite good. He was able to defeat an incumbent, which hadn't happened in nearly 30 years. Looking at polling today, Donald Trump leads by 1.1% in the state. He's the clear favorite. Just look at the spread of polls. He's leading in virtually every single one of them. Kamala Harris never took the lead in Arizona, except for a very short period during the Democratic convention when she peaked. But ever since then, Trump has been ahead, and he's been able to hold on to this lead. Arizona is going to be lean Republican. I expect the polling here to underestimate Trump once again, and I see the former president on track to win the state by around 2 to 4 points. Meanwhile, in Georgia, we have a very similar story. It voted for Trump by very similar margins in the last 2 elections. In 2016, it went to Trump by 5. Arizona went to Trump by 3.5. In 2020, Arizona went to Biden by 0.3. He also won Georgia by 0.24. Georgia was the most competitive state in the entire election. Today, it is also, just like Arizona, on track to flip red once again. Trump leads by 0.5% in the polling average. Biden led by 1.24 years ago, so Trump's performance has already been much better than it was against Biden in the last election. Looking at the spread of polls here, Trump leads in an overwhelming majority. Trump has also been ahead throughout basically the entirety of the election cycle. There's no doubt the Peach State is going to remain in Republican hands. It generally is still conservative. Brian Kemp won his re-election as governor by a likely margin in 2022, and so Georgia is going to go back to Trump. He's going to win it by around 2 to 3 points. Up in North Carolina, this is the only swing state that voted for Trump in both of the last 2 elections, and the Tar Heel state is on track to vote for the former president once again. Trump leads by 0.5% in the polling average. However, just look at the 10 most recent polls from the state. All of them, except for this Atlas Intel poll, show Trump leads in every single one except for the 3 ties. Kamala Harris isn't ahead in even a single one, and she has never taken the lead in North Carolina. Considering how much polls overestimate Democratic support, if Harris can't even lead in the polls here, she really has no chance in the actual election. So North Carolina is also going to be lean red. Trump's probably going to win this state by 3 to 5 percentage points. So, Trump is now just 8 electoral votes away from the presidency. He only needs one more state. It can be either Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania, not Nevada, because it doesn't have enough electoral power. Trump has won these 3 states in the past. In fact, he won all of them back in 2016 by narrow margins against Hillary Clinton. And even then, he only needed one of them. We actually have one more lean state left. This is very good news for Donald Trump. I see the former president carrying the Keystone State of Pennsylvania by just over 2 percentage points. He leads by 0.3% in the polling average, but this is not going to stop him. Pennsylvania is going to vote for Trump by a larger margin than what the polling average says. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was supposed to win the state by 8.2. In the end, she lost it entirely. In 2020, Biden was supposed to win the state by 7. In the end, he won it by just 1.2. Trump has recently retaken the lead. The race has been very close, even when Biden was still in the race before his disaster of a debate performance. But there's no doubt that Trump is going to win Pennsylvania back. It's going to be the final lean state on our map. Now, with 3 states remaining, these are all going to be tilt states, decided by less than 1%. We're going to begin up in the Midwest with Wisconsin and Michigan, 2 states where polling heavily overestimated Democratic support in the last election. Wisconsin was supposed to go to Biden by 6.3. He eventually won the state by 0.6. Michigan was supposed to go to Biden by 7.2. He eventually won it by just 2.8. In Michigan, Donald Trump has taken the lead in the polling after being behind, basically, since the time Harris entered the race. Trump is now the favorite once again, but this is definitely not a state he needs. In fact, all 3 of the remaining states are not states that he actually needs to win. In Wisconsin, Trump is behind by just 0.3%, but we can see out of the 5 most recent polls from the state, Trump leads in every single one of them. Harris hasn't been ahead in the state in over 2 weeks, and Trump is going to take the lead here very, very soon, right after this Marquette poll expires. Looking at the average over the last few months, Harris has been ahead, just like in Michigan, basically since she entered the race. But she's going to lose the lead soon, and she's also going to lose Wisconsin on November 5th. Both of these states are going to tilt Trump. I see him winning both of them by margins of around 1 percentage point. Finally, in Nevada, a state no Republican has won since 2004, it's a big surprise that Trump now leads in the polling average. He's ahead by 0.2% against Harris. The new Wall Street Journal poll has him leading by 6. I have this state as a pure toss-up. I can realistically see either candidate winning. But really, Nevada doesn't matter too much. It only has 6 electoral votes. There's no scenario where either Harris or Trump actually needs Nevada, so I don't expect them to campaign there very much in the coming weeks. For now, I'm going to place it in the tilt red column, just considering Trump's surge in the polls. If he's able to continue this momentum, I believe he's going to be the first Republican to flip Nevada in 2 decades. This is my updated 2024 electoral map prediction, with 20 days to go until the election. Donald Trump with 312 electoral votes, easily winning re-election by his largest margin yet. Kamala Harris at just 226, the worst Democratic performance since 1988.